Good afternoon, bird class. Welcome back. So last time we met, I introduced everyone to this guy. And ask for suggestions for names. So I wrote down all of the names that have been suggested to me. And I thought you guys should have a chance to vote on the name. Can you see it again? It's just this little pink flamingo beanie baby. It works great for demonstrating bird things. Ooh, it's a close race. The lead name is only up by one vote. So if you have an opinion, very important stuff we're doing here. Okay, I'm giving you 10 more seconds. Okay. Oof. It's a little close. Look at that. Hamilton, 5 votes. Daphne and Franny got 4 each. I think that means we're going to have a complicated name for this bird. Daphne, Franny, Hamilton, maybe? I'll think on it and we'll either have a runoff between those 3 next time, or I'll announce some combo name version. All right, oops, there we go. And now on to announcements. So the material, the assignments that are up this week are a little longer than the assignments we've had so far. This week is a review week. So we have a review quiz and a set of review short answer questions. Both due Sunday, February 13th before midnight. These both cover material from the beginning of the semester to the end of finches and canaries, which I think we've got 5 minutes of material on finches and canaries in lecture today. Otherwise, it ended last week. It's not going to cover our next topic, which is internal anatomy. These are open note. And other than that, they're slightly longer than the quizzes we've seen before and the short answer questions we've seen before. But other than that, they're very, very similar. All right. When we wrapped up last time, we were starting to talk about breeding, specifically breeding finches and canary, and finches and canaries. So just like dogs and cats, there are too many of some types of birds in captivity. So this is true of budgies and zebra finches. Those are the two big ones. So if you're going to breed, just like if you were going to breed your dog and your cat, you have to think about this. Somebody who is a good dog breeder does things like guarantees that they will take the dog back if you can't keep it for some reason. Cat just knocked something over in the other room. They try and breed for particular characteristics like really good health. People who breed birds will breed for unusual color patterns, or in the case of canaries, good singing ability, because there is a genetic component to that, as well as a exposure to the bird song. If you decide you're going to breed, you want to make sure of a couple of things first. You want to make sure the potential parents are healthy. If you've got zebra finches, if you've got a male and a female in the same cage, they're gonna breed. So you don't want to allow them to indiscriminately breed. So you want to make sure they're in a good weight, they've got good feather condition. A bird that looks good is, that's your first sign that something might be going wrong if the bird's feathers don't look good. Finches are cavity nesters. They use these enclosed nest types. You can provide nesting material for them to construct a nest inside of that. This can be things like cut grasses, purchased material. For slightly larger birds, you might be able to use hay. You want to make sure with the grasses that those have not been exposed to pesticides or herbicides. You want to be careful about that. Do not use hair. There's an idea in, I would call it an urban myth, that you should clean your hairbrushes outside or brush your dog outside so the wild birds can come and pick up the hair and use it to nest with. Please don't. If your dog has really short hair, that's not a big deal. But if it's long-haired, even, the length of the hair on my head, that can get wrapped around the baby bird's legs and cause serious damage. So hair is not a good material for nesting. And you replace all material each time you breed, including these nest cavities. These are very, very, very hard to clean. And basically, the best thing to do is chuck them and buy new. You can, oh, I'm running out of space. You can use a wooden nest box, but those will need to be bleached every breeding season. Okay, I've got a couple more points to make, so I'm going to clear these images. If you will need to take a screenshot, now's the time to do it. It's the nice thing about Zoom classes, you can take screenshots. Okay. Overbreeding is a problem with zebra and society finches. They will breed and breed and breed and breed. The problem with this is not just overpopulations, but the females can develop egg binding. When we get to the discussion about common diseases in pet birds, we'll talk about egg binding. It's basically a situation where an egg gets stuck inside the mother's body. She can't lay it for whatever reason, and it's trapped there. And this is one of those things that, again, requires an avian vet. And if you take a zebra finch to an avian vet with egg binding, I don't know if there's anything they can do. They're just so small. So you want to space out breeding seasons. And calcium can be a problem. Again, for the female. She uses calcium from her diet to make eggshells. If she doesn't have enough calcium in her diet, she pulls it out of her bones, and she makes her bones much more fragile. So one thing you can do is pull eggs the day they're laid and replace with decoys. Some females will breed even if there's not, or well, they'll lay eggs even if there's not a male around. So you give them eggs to sit on, and eventually they'll realize they're not going to hatch and get tired of them, but that's given you a good period of time when they're not breeding. So that gives the parents a break. All right, I think I've got a picture on the next page for the next part. So screenshot. Mary, go ahead. You're muted, Mary.
Sorry about that. I was wondering if zebra finches make good pets for kids.
For children, they're pretty hands-off. For children. So a lot depends on the individual child. I wouldn't recommend them for young children, but maybe for older children who can be a little calm around the birds. Generally speaking, though, if you're getting a pet for kids, you need to be prepared to do all of the work to take care of them, because you can't trust the kids to do that. Does mom get depressed when the eggs don't hatch? Good question, Fiona. And the answer is no. So there are in all animals, there are different approaches to breeding. One approach is to have a few offspring at a time, like one or two, and put a lot of resources and efforts into raising that. Good Lord, the cats are crazy today. You put a lot of resources into that individual child. And the species that do that, like humans, like elephants, like horses, they will get upset if they lose the offspring. The other end of the spectrum is species who have lots and lots of children, but they have lots and lots of children hoping that only, one makes it to adulthood. They really only need to raise 1 to 2 offspring in their entire lifetime. And so those species don't tend to put as much time and effort into the offspring, and they don't get upset when they go missing. They just expect to lose them. Yeah, well, they probably don't expect to lose them, but they don't have that tight bond biologically that we get with our offspring. So some of them don't make it, and the parent just goes, yeah, okay, whatever, go off and do my own thing. When we talk specifically about breeding, I will give you the math on how many eggs ducks live in their lifetime and how many potential offspring a duck can produce. And it's insane. It's an insane number. Yeah, this is similar to what happened in human society before antibiotics and vaccines, when at least half of the children would die before the age of 5. So people would have a lot of kids because not a lot of them would survive and make it to adulthood. Humans tend to have stronger bonds with their offspring than like finches or ducks or any of these animals that have large numbers of offspring at a time. Okay. Good question. Oh, no, I don't. I thought I had another picture. Okay. And the last thing to talk about, we kind of talked about this last time, is hand rearing. Hand rearing is when you feed the chicks. And hand reared birds do better in captivity and are easier to do nail trimming, vet visits, and that sort of thing. But it is a lot of work. Newly hatched birds need to be fed about 4 times an hour or every 15 minutes during daylight. So if you got a job, you either have to be somewhere that's willing to let you bring the baby birds to work and tolerate you taking a break every 15 minutes to feed them. It's challenging to do. Some people do combinations where the people will do some feedings and will handle the chicks frequently, with the birds doing most of the care. And that's not completely hand rearing, but it gives you birds that are much more comfortable with being handled and with captivity. Some parents will not tolerate this. Depends on how comfortable the parents are with you. And they might even abandon the chicks if you mess with them too much. But if the parents are comfortable being handled, then they'll be much more comfortable with this kind of thing. And like I said, we're going to have a lecture on breeding, and we're going to talk in more detail about how you raise these chicks and exactly what you need to do. And that ends the discussion on canaries and finches. Any questions before we move on to internal anatomy? Mary, go ahead.
Hi. So what would be like the advantages of hand rearing?
The birds are more comfortable in captivity, and it's easier on the bird when they get their nails trimmed or if they have to go to a vet.
Okay, and the downside of that is just about the feeding times.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah. Okay. Chelsea, when the babies get older, the feedings can be cut back to once an hour, but when they're newly hatched, it's more than that. You generally start out every 15 minutes, move it back to every 20 minutes, and then move it back to every 30 minutes as the chicks get older. The good thing about zebra finches is that the chicks will be basically able to feed themselves and care for themselves completely within a couple of weeks. So it's only a couple of weeks that you really have to do the frequent feedings there. All right. Now we're going to go under the feathers, and we're going to talk about the internal anatomy of birds. This is a hummingbird skeleton. What do you guys notice about it? Do you notice anything odd? The neck, okay, yep. Funny curved neck. The wings, you're not actually seeing the wings. We're going to get to what this is. That is inside the breast. The wings are kind of here. They're hard to see. The tailbone, yeah, the tailbone looks different. The skull, yep. This on the tip of the beak, I think that is, I think that's an artifact of trying to preserve a tiny little skeleton like this. So I don't think that's not part of the skeleton. But yeah, it does look funny. What about this thing? What is that? Ear bone. No, it's not. We're going to talk about that. That's actually in the eye socket. It's a bone in the eye. So let's go through all of the weird adaptations that birds have that make them birds. So we are not going to learn the names of all the bones. Not going to happen. We're going to learn a couple of things. So the first is, as we saw in the last image, there's a ring that is in the eye socket. It's called a sclerotic ring. Now, I have another image here. You can close up of that hummingbird. You can see it right there. All right. So the sclerotic ring is common in birds, reptiles, dinosaurs, and fishes. So it's not found in mammals, basically. We don't know what it's there for. We don't know why most animals have it, but mammals don't. So it's a great mystery. If you want to get a PhD, here's a good topic for you to try and figure out what that sclerotic ring does. Although I haven't looked it up in the past 2 years. Somebody may have figured it out in the past 2 years. The keel and the furcula. So let me give you some arrows here. So that is the furcula, also known as the wishbone. You know how we have these bones right here, the clavicles? It's the same bone, except they're fused together. The other bone I want to draw your attention to is this guy. That is the keel. So these are both really important for flight. The keel, it's kind of, if you look at it end on, it's kind of a T-shaped bone with that flat piece coming out from the breast. That is where all the flight muscles attach. Yeah, like a boat, same word. So the keel is for flight muscle attachment. So birds that don't fly, like penguins and ostriches, don't have this big keel sticking out because they don't fly. They don't need that attachment space. Birds that do fly need huge breast muscles to power flight. And so they need a huge space for those muscles to attach to. The furcula, we're gonna come back to this in a couple of slides and talk specifically about what it does, but it reduces the amount of energy needed during flight. We'll talk about exactly how that happens in a few minutes. Question in the comment, would the sclerotic ring be similar to how humans have appendix and we don't need? Well, 2 points here. One, probably not. It probably has a function. We just haven't figured it out. And two, one of the big reasons we don't need an appendix is because of modern medical care. Before we had antibiotics and various digestive treatments, if you had a really bad intestinal illness, the bacteria that would be invading your intestines could kill off the native bacteria that lives there, your microbiome. You may have heard about that. And the appendix is a little pouch that holds microbiome bacteria. So if you lost everything in the intestines because of an invading disease, the appendix would allow new bacteria to recolonize your digestive tract. Daniel said it has something to do with eyesight. I don't know if that's confirmed or hypothesis. It could be either. I haven't looked it up for a while. Oh, let me see if I can see that image. No, it doesn't want me to open it. Okay, I'll take a look. Between this class and next class. And if I find something, I'll let you know. Okay. We do see a lot of neck vertebra in birds. Generally speaking, birds have longer necks. In mammals, most mammals have exactly the same number of neck vertebrae. So a giraffe has the same number of neck vertebrae that you do. They're just much bigger. Birds went the other way and just made more bones. And when we watch, we're going to watch some videos. Part of that is probably due to flight, like all of these adaptations, because in a bird is in flight, they need to, and they're hunting, they need to be able to keep their head steady so that their vision stays steady, but their body tends to move with the wing strokes, with their flapping their wings. And so the neck vertebra, allow the head to be held kind of steady. It's really cool looking. What else do we have? The back vertebra here are all fused together, which provides a lot of strength and support for flight. And this little guy back here, I don't think I gave you that word. It's the pygostyle. It's the same equivalent to the bones in your cat's tails. And it does the same kind of thing. It allows for movement of the tail, which is actually important in flight. Okay, so furcula and keel, we do need to know both what those are and what they do, just in very basic terms. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide now. Okay. So because of the way my computer is set up, and quirks about Zoom, I can show you videos, but we can't hear sound. So I want to show you some videos of birds flying, and I'm going to talk over the videos. Okay. Oh, this is not what I thought it was. No, this is.
Oh, dude, they let you in?
Yeah.
Dude, you fucking lucky. Usually they lock people out, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's not muted.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, so what I'm going to do, because I thought this was a different video, this is one video that I really like you guys to look at. I'm going to put it in Blackboard and you guys can watch it on your own. Let me see if these other ones are. Okay. Oh yeah, this is the one I wanted. This is a goshawk. Goshawks are predators on other birds. So they have to fly very quickly through dense forest and able to catch their prey. And they are just amazing at being able to maneuver through tight spaces. And that's what this video is showing. Did you catch it? Did you see it? We slowed it down. Okay, now we're going to get it real slow. See, the bird is flying and it pulls its wings in and right through that hole. And you can see the tail spreads out right after it comes through the hole, right before it goes through the hole and right after it comes out. And that tail is important for maintaining lift during this process. Well, guess what? You can also go through a smaller hole. Notice it's grabbing the bottom of the hole and pushing off. This is 40 times slowed down. This is one flying in a woods. Now, another thing you might notice as the bird goes through some of these gaps, you might be able to see the nictitating membrane come across the eye. I saw it flash right there. So let's look at his eye again. You see that white flash? That's the nictitating membrane coming across to protect the eye from bumping into anything like leaves. And yet another differently shaped obstacle. No problem. Again, it's using its feet to help push it through the tight space. And this last bit is full speed. Okay. So that's the goshawk. Yeah, he doesn't slow down at all. It's amazing. Yeah, and this is another one with talking on it. So we'll post that one on Blackboard as well. Okay. Now that we're all impressed, when we talk about flight, we're talking about takeoff, landing, soaring, and hovering. Those are, and sometimes diving, not diving in the, well, diving into the water or diving through the air. They're all important parts of the process. And there's interesting stuff in each of these. So for example, takeoff. Birds don't stand on the ground and use their wings and take off. Birds hop and then use their wings. So they hop up just a little bit, and that gives more space underneath the wing so that they can really take off better. The shape of the wing is what we call an airfoil. Let me see if I can draw this for you. And oh, come on, give me the drawing tool. There we go. An airfoil is kind of like the shape of an airplane wing. It's a little bit rounded in front and trailing to the back. And that shape creates what's called lift. So it helps the bird get above the ground or to stay above the ground. Birds also need to be streamlined in flight. Flying takes a huge amount of energy. And if you're, a square flying through the air, you're going to have a lot of wind resistance. And then we've got birds like the albatross. Albatross are just seriously amazing birds. They have locking joints for soaring, which is flying without moving the joints, just kind of holding the wing steady. And their joints lock so they don't have to use as much energy to hold their wings steady. And albatross can stay airborne for days. They can keep soaring for days. There's also a less studied bird, the alpine swift. And we've only just discovered this, but they can stay in the air, not landing, for up to 200 days. We had to be able to put little GPS trackers on these guys to discover this. 200 days without landing. Wow. That's just amazing. And I'd bet there were some of you who thought birds were boring before we started this class. All right. Okay, going on to the next screen. Not that there's much on this screen. Now this next part, we're going to be talking about how the furcula works. So you're going to need to pay attention carefully. And I'm going to repeat myself a couple of times to make sure that we've all got this. So this is the wishbone right here. You're still on the video screen. Oh, shoot. I wish you'd. Okay, how about that? You should be back with me now. Good, glad to hear it. Okay, so we're talking about the furcula. This is your wishbone right here. And this is the humerus, the upper arm bone. It's called the same thing in dogs, cats, birds, horses. You can see here the radius and ulna, same as we have radius and ulna. Bird wings get weird out here at the metacarpals, but this part looks exactly like your arm. So we have a muscle here that connects to the humerus and to the keel, right? That part that sticks out. That's one of the flight muscles, and that brings the wing down. There is another muscle that comes up and loops around structures that we have scapula in our back. They don't look anything like this. It's the same bone. It looks very different. And it, this muscle loops around there and connects to the backside of the humerus on both sides. So it's kind of a continuous little loop. And that lifts the wings up. So what happens is the furcula can flex and bend, and it acts like a spring. And when you do the downstroke with those really big flight muscles, that puts a strain on the furcula. And then on the upstroke, the furcula goes back into shape and helps pull on these muscles to give extra force to the lift. So it makes it so that lifting the wings doesn't take nearly as much energy. Did that make sense? It's complicated. Furcula acts as a spring, loads with tension on the downstroke, uses that tension to reduce the amount of muscle needed for upstroke. So there's your simplest terms definition there. There are lots of adaptations in our bodies and in bird bodies and in other bodies to help reduce the amount of energy needed for certain movements. Your kneecap, for example, helps make it easier for you to run. It can reduce the amount of energy, the amount of muscles you need to do that. All right, screenshot. If you want to take a picture, take a picture. Okay. All right. Now we're going to talk about owls. So these are all owl wings and owl feathers. The top is the wing of an owl. I'm not sure which one. And the leading edge, the front edge of the wing has this comb on the edge of that feather. So most of the time, the edges of feathers, the flight feathers, they're pretty smooth. There's not usually these little comb-like projections, but on owls, there is this comb-like projection on the front. And on the other edges, you can almost see it here on the ends of these feathers. You also have some comb. And this comb-like structure on flight feathers means makes the flight silent. So owls that have these structures, when they fly, they don't make any noise. Not all owls have this. It's one of the things that you only see in owls that eat mammals. You don't see it in hawks. You don't see it in owls, other owls that eat insects or fish. And there are fishing owls. And those don't have this adaptation. Because if you're eating fish, it's not like the fish are hearing you come flying through the air. So it's a modification so that the owl can sneak up on mammals. All right, that is our cool owl flight adaptation. Some species will eat their babies.
Only if they don't just survive, right? That's what my friend told me.
Yeah, I don't know how accurate that one is.
I know
I
they eat their babies. I just don't know how or why.
I don't know how accurate that is. So I know that birds, if they have a baby that is not thriving, that it's not doing well, they will kick it out of the nest. It wouldn't surprise me to see owls doing that. I have not heard of them actually eating the not thriving offspring. It might be related to the urban legend that if you handle a baby bird, the parent will reject it, which is not true. I don't know. Going to add that to my list of things to look up. All right. Okay. If you are looking at a bird, the shape of their wing, especially the length of the wing combined with their body weight, determines how they fly. So very long, relatively narrow wings, so narrow from the front to the back, those are really good for going long distance over water. So this is the wing of an albatross. And it really helps them to be able to just kind of hover over the water without having to flap very often. You can also see hovering wings that look like this, relatively long, but quite broad, with the space between the primary feathers on the edge. Ooh, somebody went drawing. The slots in the feathers are really important because these guys are soaring on rising hot air, and the wind and the force that's helping them soar is not reliable. It can come and go. This wing here, this elliptical wing, it's kind of almost round, and that's for fast, highly controlled flying. So taking off quickly, maneuvering through branches, avoiding predators. This would be like the bird we saw the video of. High speed flying, kind of medium size, medium length, a little bit more narrow, not as wide as either of these wings. Again, sustained this time, high speed flying. And then there are hovering wings that are relatively small compared to the body. So think about hummingbirds. Their wings are actually pretty small compared to their body. And that's, again, for very highly controlled and flight and hovering. And of course, one of scientists' favorite cartoons, XKCD did one about this. Talked about the wing type, zooming used by falcons and things falcons try to eat. Big and swoopy wing, taking off, circling ominously. The big hawks, the eagles, the vultures. That's true, that's this wing right here. The active soaring wing for cruising very efficiently, gulls and albatross. Flappy wing, I think that's just hysterical. Call it a flapping wing. And then the triangle, breaking windows when flying past. Supersonic jets and really scary falcons. He's so funny. Okay. So that's kind of the overview of these. When we are thinking about bird-powered flight, birds in the swift group can fly at 100 miles per hour. So chimney swifts in New England would fall into this category. That's pretty damn fast, right? The peregrine in a dive. So peregrine falcons fly up high, spot their prey, and then dive down. And those can reach speeds at least 240 miles per hour. So if they hit you, if a peregrine smacks into you at the bottom of a dive, that's going to hurt. And in fact, that is how peregrines kill most of their prey. They can kill birds that are larger than themselves just because of how hard they hit them. The impact is enough to kill a duck or a gull. Really freaking cool. All right, here's some more fun stuff. Like a beak bullet. Yes, except they hit with their feet. So this little guy here is one of the more bizarre birds in the world. It's called a Watson. And it's got a little hook. It's got these little claws on the wing. They only have these, you can see it here on the adult. Here's a claw, here's a claw. These birds nest over water. And if a predator comes along, the baby birds jump out of the nest. They can't fly. They're not ducks, they're not swimmers. And they'll land in the water and they'll get to shore and they have to use the hooks, the claws on their wings to climb back up into the branches. This is a spur-winged goose. If you're scared of geese, this is the goose you should be scared of. Most geese just smack you really hard with their wing. Well, this one has a big, big spur on the end of its wing. I don't think it might be a modified claw, but it's pretty nasty. So it's actually not unusual. We don't think of birds having claws in their wings, but it's actually, you know, not that uncommon among different species. Energy, when we talk about flying, I've mentioned this, it requires a huge amount of energy. Energy also requires oxygen. So all vertebrates, all animals, I can say that, all animals require oxygen because oxygen helps us produce energy from our food supply. Birds have an additional energy burden because of flight. And so they also have modifications to their heart, to their lungs, that help them spread that oxygen through the body. So pound for pound, birds have much larger hearts than mammals do. They're really, really big compared to their body size. And the respiratory system of the bird has a volume twice that of what you find in mammals of the same size. So they can really bring in a lot more oxygen, get a lot more oxygen out of the air, and their heart can push that blood around the body much more efficiently, much faster, so that that oxygen gets to all of the muscles that are needed for flight. So let's look at the circulatory and respiratory systems. So with the circulatory system, you've got your huge, huge heart here. If this was in us, your heart is probably, it's a little bigger than the size of your fist. If you were a bird, it would probably be more like this big, which is about the size of a cow heart. Their hearts are also four-chambered. You guys learn about this with dog and cat anatomy. Yes, no, no. Okay. So not all animals have a full four-chambered heart. So we see this in mammals, birds, and crocodiles. The four-chambered heart allows for separation of oxygen-rich blood from oxygen-poor blood. So that means the oxygen leaving the heart has, the blood leaving the heart has the most possible oxygen. For comparison, reptiles have a 3-chambered heart. So there's some mixing of the oxygen rich and the oxygen poor blood. So their blood doesn't have as much oxygen in it as your blood does. And the fishes have a 2-chambered heart. They don't even try and separate it. They send the blood from the heart across the gills, and then it moves around the rest of the body. Not very efficient. So animals that are warm-blooded, that maintain a constant body temperature, are going to have a 4-chambered heart, because maintaining that constant temperature requires more energy. Crocodiles and their 4-chambered heart, that's a whole nother story. And since this isn't herpetology, we're not going to go into that. Okay. Take a quick screenshot if you want to. You didn't cover it in herpetology. That's too bad. And then the respiratory system. So the bird respiratory system is much, much more efficient than anything found in mammals. There is a huge volume. It's not just the lungs. So the lungs are here in red. And this, of course, is the trachea going up to the mouth. And they do have sinuses in the skull, just like we do. But they also have these kind of blue structures here. Those are air sacs. And these are outside the lung, and they can hold an incredible amount of oxygen. I'm sorry, of air, which has oxygen in it. Those air sacs are important for one-way airflow. So when we breathe air in and we breathe it out. It goes in and out. 2-directional airflow. In birds, it goes in, but it goes into these air sacs, and then it goes across the lungs in one direction. And then it goes into these other air sacs before being exhaled. And the process of this is really complicated, but it allows birds to extract more oxygen from a single breath than we can. So if birds had our lungs, they would have to breathe at least twice, or probably 3 or 4 times as fast as they do in order to get enough oxygen. So, okay, so these are very important points. Screenshot. All right. This is complicated. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over it now, and then I'm going to go over it again on Thursday. So we're going to kind of wrap up with this topic and then go over it again next time, because you got to hear it a couple of times to get it down. Do the air sacs help birds fly more efficiently? It allows them to get more oxygen out of the air, and that oxygen is important for them to get enough energy. If they didn't have the air sacs, they wouldn't be able to make enough energy in their muscles to fly long distances, especially. So basically, in animals, food plus oxygen equals energy for the cells. So energy for the muscles and, you know, everything else your body does. If you don't have as much oxygen, you can't get as much energy out of your food. You can't compensate for that by having more food either. It's not, the difference is so big that you can't just eat enough to live without oxygen. All right. When a bird inhales, the air comes down the trachea and goes right past the lungs into the posterior air sacs. The posterior air sacs are now full of air. The bird exhales, the air from the posterior air sacs moves into the lungs where oxygen is extracted. The next inhalation, the air moves into the anterior air sacs, the ones towards the front. And the next exhalation, those anterior air sacs send the air back up the trachea. So the whole process for one volume of oxygen, one inhale, takes 2 rounds of inhalation and exhalation to go through the system and exit the bird. So if I draw this, the oxygen comes in to the posterior air sac. From the posterior air sac, it goes into the lungs, where the oxygen is removed. The air from the lungs then moves into the front or anterior air sacs, and then those empty out of the bird. You see why I said I'm going to have to talk about this more than once. All right, so I'm going to end there because I really want to, I really don't want to spend more time on it today. I want you to sit and think about it so we can go over it next time and make sure that we all understand what's going on. Does anybody have questions about anything we've discussed today? Nope. Okay, then. In that case, we'll call it a day. And oh, CVS has free N95s. That's a good thing to know. I'll see everybody next time.